I'm Barry Johnson. This is Studio Talk. Today we're going to be demonstrating the power of Apple's new M2 Pro Mac Mini. And so this is the latest incarnation of the Mac Mini. Now this particular model I'm demonstrating for you today is the base M2 Pro Mac Mini. It is not the upgraded 12-core Mac Mini that so many folks are talking about, saying it competes hand in hand with the Mac Studio Max. And so that's a pretty exciting venture as well. So in today's session, we're going to demonstrate the power of this. This is all about 96K. I recently did a demonstration that's very similar to this one, if you'd like to check that out. And that's basically doing the same test I do here, but doing them at 48K, so you can get an idea depending on the sample rate that you particularly work in. So before I get started with all of that, do me a favor. If you like this particular content, you like my channel, you watch regularly, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel. It really helps me grow, and I'd really appreciate it. So today's session is going to be demonstrated in Pro Tools. So for those of you that watch my channel, you say, Barry, what in the world are you doing demonstrating this in Pro Tools? You can't stand Avid. And you're right. I'm a veteran of over 20 years, 20 plus years of TDM/HDX, and I finally got sick and tired of Avid's price gouging people and just ridiculous pricing to be able to use a particular DAW that is no better or no different than any other out there. So I finally gave up on it. That said, there's a lot of folks out there that use it. If you choose to use it, that's your choice. We all have differences of opinions on these things, and I respect yours, so please respect mine. So today, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be demonstrating that. So again, today's session is at 96K. I will be demonstrating a max playback at 2048 buffer in both the Rosetta mode as well as Avid's new Pro Tools Silicon beta version. It's not full-on Silicon native yet, but I will be demonstrating the beta version of that. And then after that, we'll move on over to a 64 sample and show you what it's like getting max playback at a 64 buffer setting while recording a channel for 4 minutes. And I also do that in the Rosetta mode as well as the Apple Silicon mode. You'll see in each one of these, I use the same plugins on every particular example, same settings. The audio in these particular sessions is just a recorded signal tone generator, because you'll hear me say this again, but a DAW has no idea what audio it's playing back. And if you try to get a session with that many tracks being played back, it's just going to sound like gobble, gobble, gobble. So anyway, that's what's on every single track. I also did a signal tone generator to demonstrate that every single plugin is constantly having to work. There is no relief in there whatsoever. So that's another thing. Now, the whole beauty of this whole thing, I did use all native plugins to Pro Tools. And the reason I did that is so you can recreate this exact same session on your computer and determine whether or not this particular bump in performance, if it is a bump at all, if it's worthy of the upgrade at this particular time. I always recommend never upgrade your computer until your computer will simply not do what you need it to do anymore. Forget having the latest bells and whistles. If it's doing and it's working properly for you, then leave it alone. Wait for the next incarnation, M3, M4, whatever comes later. Now, if you're a Windows user, this is just strictly out there for the Mac users. Obviously, you can build a comparable computer on the Windows front that has these same specs and achieves as equal performance, if not better at times. So this is not a Mac versus Windows thing. This just happens to be demonstrating Apple's new Mac. So come on, all right? So anyway, let's go ahead and head over to Pro Tools now, where this first session is going to be at 96K at a 2048 buffer, and the first one's going to start out in Rosetta mode. Let's get to it. Okay, so here we are in Pro Tools. I'm going to show you I'm using the latest version here as of the filming of this particular video. Next up, I'll navigate over to the Finder window where I'll show you that I'm running Pro Tools in Rosetta mode. As soon as we go into the Get Info section here, you'll see that I'm open using Rosetta. After this, we'll navigate back over to Pro Tools and look at the session setup, where you'll see this is at 96K, which you can see right there. And then we'll head back over to the Playback engine, where you'll see I'm running this at a 2048 buffer sample, okay? Now we'll head back to Pro Tools. You can see there that all the tracks that are there, we'll head over to the mix window and go through the plugins. We've got an EQ7, next up a Pro Compressor, followed up by Pultec EQ, then real tape saturation, and then finally we'll finish up with a deverb. Now these are on every single track in the session. In this particular session, I have 200 tracks playing back at 96K at a 2048 buffer sample. You can see that as we scroll through here, these are all signal tone generators that were recorded. So I had the same exact audio on every channel. Of course, a DAW doesn't know what audio it's playing back. And so we're going to hit play here. And as we're going through this, it'll fast forward in a second. But know that I did listen to this in real time as I did all of these, and there were no pops and clicks. I kept adjusting tracks until there were absolutely no pops and clicks of any kind or no warnings or anything. So I'm confident in telling you that this is how many I was able to get on this particular Mac Mini Pro. All right, so here we are in Pro Tools. I'm going to show you that I'm running this in Apple Silicon native version, which you can see there. Then let's head back over to Pro Tools, and I'll show you in the session setup. Again, we're doing this at 96K. Then we'll head back over to the Playback engine and confirm again that we're at a 2048 buffer sample. From here, you're going to navigate back over to the mix window. We'll go through the plugins again, an EQ7, followed up by a Pro compressor. Then next up will be a Playback EQ, then a real tape saturation, and then finally a deverb, and that's on all of these particular tracks in this session as it was with the last one. Here we're getting 240 tracks, so we gained 40 tracks going to Silicon Native here versus Rosetta. Again, you can see there it's 240 tracks. Okay, we hit play here, and then I'll fast forward through this in a second like I did the last one. But here we gained an additional 40 tracks by using the Apple Silicon native version, which is in public beta, rather than launching in Rosetta. So once they finalize that, we're going to see some improvements there. Well, as you can see here, we could get quite a lot of tracks for playback in Rosetta mode, but even more in Silicon mode. So I think there's hope out there for you Pro Tools users that once all the bugs and kinks are worked out and they truly finalize it, I'm hoping we'll even see for you, as a matter of fact, not for me, you don't use it anymore, but for you, I hope you guys will see some increased performance out of that even beyond this, but certainly a performance gain to say the least. All right, so next up, let's head on over and watch the demonstration of recording a track while doing maximum playback at 96K at a 64 buffer, which I think just about everybody out there should be easily able to track at a 64 buffer without hearing any kind of latency, okay? So let's watch that video now. All right, so here we are in Pro Tools. I'm going to show you I'm running this using Rosetta for this particular illustration. Next, we'll go back to Pro Tools, and I'll show you that I'm, again, using Rosetta. And let's go over to our Playback engine, where you're going to see this is at 64 samples. And then we'll head down to the session setup, and you'll see, again, we're at 96K. From here, let's head back down and show you that we're getting 166 tracks in playback while we do the recording. Again, the plugins, an EQ7, Pro compressor, Playback EQ, real tape saturation, then followed up with a deverb. Now down here what I'm doing is I'm sending the output of one particular track into the recording track via a bus, and that's what's feeding the recording track. From here you can see again we're at 166 tracks, and then we'll go back in here and we'll start recording. Now, as it starts recording, you can see there. Now, know that I did listen to this in full playback. Both the recorded channels was the playback channels, no pops and clicks. Everything was fine going through that. As you can see, while I'm recording, it's doing screen draws pretty fast and pretty quickly without having any particular issues at all. Most of the time, if you're pushing a system like that, you would get a lot of errors. So we'll fast forward through this, where you'll see we record through the entire time with no particular errors or anything like that. And of course, as I said, I listened to the whole thing. There were no pops and clicks or any artifacts whatsoever. Right, so here again, I'm going to show you where I'm running this in Apple Silicon this go around. I'll also demonstrate that for you in Pro Tools, where you can also see the same thing. This is in the beta version of their Silicon. Here we're going to show Playback Engine again at 64 buffer samples. And then our session, of course, is at 96K. As you can see right there. Let's head back over to our mix window, go through the plugins again, EQ7, Pro Compressor, Pultec EQ, Real Tape Saturation, and finishing up with the Deverb. Now, as I did the last time, I'm routing the output of one particular channel into the recorded channel via a bus. So that's what's feeding the recording that's happening during recording playback here. This time we got 205 tracks. So that's a bump up from what we had before. I think it was 166 in the Rosetta version. So, of course, let's select our range and hit play and record. Now, that's a pretty significant gain in the Silicon native version over the Rosetta, and I think we can expect to see that even get better. Now, during playback and record, I did listen to all the tracks back, including the recorded track, and again, there were no pops and clicks, no artifacts of any kind, and of course, no errors, as you can see here. Okay, well, as you can clearly see by this, Apple Silicon beats out Rosetta, no doubt about it, as you would expect it would. So those of you that record and do your playback at 96K, and that's why you do your sessions, this should give you a good benchmark, an idea of what you could expect if you were to buy this machine, if you're doing particularly audio. Now, after this, my next video is going to be in Logic Pro using Massive X. I'm going to be demonstrating a session, and that will be at 96K because I do believe that most people doing virtual instruments do so at 96K. So I'll be demonstrating the maximum number of playback as well as being able to record at a 64 buffer with as many versions of Massive X as we can get. I know a lot of you want to see Omnisphere, but I don't own that one. I own Complete 13, I think, if I remember correctly. And I still don't think it's even Apple Silicon native yet, so I'm not quite sure about that, but I don't think it is. So anyway, that'll give you an idea in Logic if you want to check out that video. But until next time, I hope I hope you've enjoyed this video. Do me a favor, leave some comments down below. Tell me what you think about this particular session I've done here for you. And I appreciate any feedback that you give. Again, as I stated in the beginning of this, if you like this video, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Help a guy grow his channel here and get more content out to more people. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate it very much. So until next time, I hope all of you have a great day. Bye-bye.